in the Bible, God smells the sweet savor of the sacrifice, and he just likes the fruit. In Babylonian, the gods are starving, and then they descend upon the sacrifice. That's in the Gilgamesh epic. The gods gathered like flies around the sacrificer. So the gods need humans. So the gods can't be too angry at humans. They can't destroy them entirely. So Erra should learn to control his emotions and not be so bothered by humans. An interesting mirror of the story of the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden story, famously, God tells Adam and Eve that if they will eat of the tree of knowledge, they will die, as actually happens. But here, the God tells Adam that he will die, but in fact, that was a lie. If he would have eaten that, if he had eaten that bread and drunk that water, he would have lived forever. In a way, it's more explicit because contact with the feminine, with the woman, through Eve, Adam lost his strength and his harmony with the world, but he gained the knowledge of good and evil. And Enkidu, through his contact with Shamchat, something similar happened to him, and he also died because of it, in the same way that Adam died.
Hello everyone, this is part 2 of interview with Eli, Tadmor, doctoral students. We're going to be talking about the Erra epic, a fascinating story similar to the flood and includes similar figures to the sons of God. Our last interview with him talked about the Babylonian influence of Ezekiel as he was living in Babylon. Make sure to check out and like and subscribe.
Could you give everyone just a general idea of what the Erra epic is?
Well, the Erra epic is a Babylonian composition that, well, the earliest manuscripts of it come from probably the end of the 8th, beginning of the 7th century BC. And the basic plot goes like this. Erra, who is the god of destruction and death, becomes angry and almost kills everyone. Why he becomes angry is more complicated, but it boils down to basically he thinks humans hold him in contempt. He thinks humans don't respect him, and he makes him very angry. And humanity is almost annihilated because of this, as something that is very much described as a second flood happens. And Erra rampages throughout Babylonia and kills a lot of people. And what he does, a bit like God, there's a section in, I think, Isaiah, maybe Jeremiah, when God is said to whistle, to call Assyria like a dog that he whistles to. So God is, at some point, he doesn't act like, he doesn't, in the Exodus, he performs all these miracles, but in the prophetic books, he's kind of a director of history. He kind of controls, he works his will through humans rather than by pillars of fire. So Erra does similar. He has a power to inflame men with hate and to cause them to kill each other. And he does that very happily and very liberally. Now, in the end, he's calmed down by Ishum, who is his companion, his vizier, as they used to call him. His name means fire, like Hebrew Esh. So his name means fire in Akkadian. How does Ishum calm him down? His point seems to be either that Erra shouldn't care so much and people hold him in contempt because he's a god. And in Mesopotamia, that's a very important difference from the Bible. The gods need humans. The gods created humans to feed them and house them. And since then, they have become dependent on them. They cannot do without them. When the flood happens, in the Mesopotamian story, in the Bible, God smells the sweet savor of the sacrifice and he just likes the fruit. In Babylonian, the gods are starving. And then they descend upon the sacrifice. That's in the Gilgamesh epic. The gods gathered like flies around the sacrificer. So the gods need humans. So the gods can't be too angry at humans. They can't destroy them entirely. So Erra should learn to control his emotions and not be so bothered by humans. Another possibility that I think about is that Erra is also deluded, because in fact he thinks from a certain point he still thinks that humans disrespect him, but in fact they do not, or rather Erra can go on killing humans and he will never be not convinced that they hold him in contempt, that this is his own internal idea rather than a reality. And I'm trying in my dissertation to figure out which of the two is true, maybe both, maybe just one. I really believed in the delusion thing. Now I more believe in the proportions thing, that is, Erra shouldn't care so much. But in any case, it's about Erra being controlled by his ego, by his pride. And he should keep those in check. A thing that is so confusing about the Erra epic, more than anything else, is it's really unclear. There are inconsistencies. Who says what, and how does what one person say relate to what the other person said, and why exactly do characters act as they do? Why does Erra go on campaign? Because I'll give you an example. Erra is roused to battle by the Seven, and I think this is also something we talk about in the context of Ezekiel. They are gods of this or minor deities in terms of destruction, the warriors. And he's in the city at the beginning of the epic, making love with his wife, who's named Mami, who's another goddess, interestingly, as he's the god of war and death, and his wife's the mother goddess, which is kind of opposites attract, I guess. And they rouse him to battle, and they say, "Why are you just in the city doing nothing? Why are you so out of shape? Why are we in the city eating women's bread? We should go out to battle. Because battle is where the young men go. It's the field of young manhood. And the citizen can never compare to the warrior. The warrior is so much masculine, so much stronger." And they say, "Oh, if you will go to war, you will earn the respect and the reverence and the obedience and the subservience of all living creatures. Everyone will maybe not love you, but fear you." And also he says, because basically there's an overpopulation thing going, the gods of hell, the gods of the underworld, cannot sleep because mankind is making too much noise. There are too many people. There are wild beasts going around. You need to cull the populations. Basically, they convince Erra to go to war through these reasons. And it should be said also that Anu, the sky god, gave the Seven to Erra. And he said that when the noise of the people shall become bothersome to you, you will use them as your weapons and you will kill humanity. So one would think that when Erra actually goes to war, it's for these reasons. But when Marduk, the king of the gods, asks Erra, Ishum asks Erra, after Erra declares war, "Why are you going to war?" He says, for they have not feared my name and held me in contempt and disregarded the command of the king of the gods and do as they wish. What's confusing is that this reason was brought up by no one up to that point. So you have the sky god giving the weapons to Erra, saying that he will go to war for reason A. You have the Seven convincing Erra to go to war by using reasons B, C, and D. And Erra just says his own reasons E and F when asked. So it's apparent these inconsistencies, things don't line up. Also, most of the plot is delivered through dialogues, not through just description, not through narrative description, but through characters talking to each other and saying to each other what they did. And then it's unclear when characters actually did what they did, because we only have them talking about it. So it's a very confusing thing. It's a pretty short epic, just less than 1,000 lines, much less than 1,000 lines. It still presents many problems. At some point, Erra goes to the Sangil, to the temple of Marduk, and he convinces him to go down to the Apsu, the social freshwater ocean. That's not the netherworld, but it's below the ground. And Marduk is going to have his image refurbished. He's going to be, in a sense, reborn. And Erra controls the world in his absence. And then there's a question, why does Marduk agree? Why does Erra want this? How is this connected to killing everyone? And we're still basically learning about this. But what I love about Erra as well, it's very visceral. It's very bloody, which makes for interesting reading. You learn a lot about the Babylonian world through it, and also it's a bit like the prophetic books in that it's an epic that's set within history, not in primeval times, but in reality the Babylonians would have found familiar. Because Erra works through history. He controls humans. And it's an epic about hate and ego. And as I see it, narcissism, because Erra almost destroys humanity because he's offended. And that's pretty narcissistic. So that's what I work on the Erra epic. I also work on, in my dissertation, about the heart in Akkadian literature. That is what the heart can do. It turns out, speak, sleep, and wake, like in the Song of Songs. My heart is awake, yet I am sleeping, and Isha Navili Biel. So in the Bible, you have the heart being awake. In Mesopotamia, it also sleeps, or at least is implied to sleep. And it is also awake. It can speak to the person, maybe lead him to delusions, do unfun stuff. And in some instances, it says, so there's a prayer to a god that says, oh my God, your angry heart has made me sick. That is the heart actually acting through the god and inflicting suffering upon other people, as though the heart is in charge and the actual god is its puppet. And this also connects to the theme of the dissertation is narcissism, passion, and delusion. So this connects not to narcissism, but to passion. And I mean passion not as in just a passion for a person or the passion, the Christ's passion, but passion is in strong emotion, so in the archaic sense. That's what I want. That's what I do. It's fun. I mean, it's very fun. In a sense, my engagement with the Arabic is, I think, similar in some respects to people's engagement with, any text that they endlessly go, whether it's Harry Potter or the Bible. It's just always finding new things, always looking for new things. And I guess Erra is like the biblical text, but like the Torah, because, there are things in the Torah that appear not to line up. And, someone who does source criticism would say the Bible, and especially not only the Bible has contradictions in it because it's composed of several sources. The Jewish sages will tell you, these contradictions are just apparent, and they make them work in many ways. I'm less familiar with how Christian interpreters deal with it.
So you're speaking from your own personal experience when you say Jewish. What was the word you used?
I know they just they kind of harmonize everything.
Yeah.
They say,
Sure.
this refers to this, and this actually agrees with this, but from a different perspective.
Right.
An example of that I just learned is so some things in the Bible you would expect the Torah to be narrated in chronological order, but sometimes there are things that are very much not in chronological order, and this appears to be contradictional, at least unexpected, something that doesn't line up. There's a Jewish saying from the Talmud, "En mukdam v'muchar b'Torah." There's no early and late in the Torah, which means that things, you can describe something that came later and then something that came earlier, and that things. So whereas like a source, someone working in source critical tradition would say, this is one source that talked about this,
right,
there's another one that talked about that, so it appears out of order. The Talmud, sage of the Talmud would say, no, it's just presented in a certain way.
Right.
Or why is Noah told to bring a certain number of animals up to the ark one time and another number and another number another time? The Talmud's like, one time it's the kosher animals, one time it's the not kosher animals.
Yeah.
So you kind of do that, and you don't take it. You kind of make the text work, even when, coming from another perspective, you would say that it doesn't work because it's not really part of the same text. It's just a lot of traditions combined.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely not an expert on that topic, although I've had a few interviews on it. It's very, very complicated, as I'm sure you know. Uh, um, but on the Erra epic, I'm curious. So I think you mentioned that there's a second flood. Did you say something like that?
Oh yeah. So it's not explicitly said, but Marduk in the epic offers this description of the flood, except the word is flood, but it may also mean catastrophe. So it's not clear if Marduk is talking about the primordial flood. He's basically talking about a time when his image became dirty and battered. And if he is talking about the flood, it's a strange flood because there's no water in it. The world just goes upside down. The stars leave their places, and the sky and the earth and the underworld rumble, and then agriculture isn't possible, and just life kind of dwindles out. But and in the epic itself, there are indications that what Erra is doing is similar to that catastrophe. And it is a second flood in the sense that everyone almost died. So in that sense, it's the second flood. Coming on. But like the first flood, humanity survived after all, thanks to the intervention of a god. In the primordial flood, it was Erra, and now it's Ishum, Erra's companion / therapist. But
His therapist. That's good.
/ therapist, yeah. Yeah, that is what I work on. What I love about it is just I love its realism and its psychological depth, and how weird it is.
Do you think it's weird on purpose, or do you think the writer's just like very vague, or what's going on there?
I don't know. It's really hard to tell what we think is weird and what the Mesopotamians would have thought is weird. In the text itself, it says the text was revealed. A god, likely Erra, revealed the text to a human called Kaptilani Marduk in a nightly vision, and that Kaptilani Marduk just wrote it up. It does appear strange, but we don't have a commentary on it. We have commentaries on some Akkadian texts, but they're commentaries on specific words rather than in the Jewish, in the Talmudic sense that you just interpret and interpret. Or the Christian commentaries, for that matter, that are similar. But we don't know what they would have made of it, or what's actually weird and what we just don't understand. Yeah. But it does appear to be very weird in that it's a bit inconsistent. Its style is very different from other Akkadian works. It's a bit more like prose and poetry, even though it's poetry. Yeah, it's a strange.
Yeah.
Strange. Also, it's in the fact that it's all in dialogue. It's like a play. Instead of saying Erra did this, you have Ishum telling Erra what he did. It's really weird. But
yeah. So I'm curious. You kind of talked about, I guess, the 7, whatever. I can't remember the word.
Yeah, I don't buy that either. By the way, I don't think that's true.
You don't buy what?
Yes, finish the thought, and then I'll tell you.
Okay. Well, I mean, you mentioned the 7. I can't remember what the word you used.
It's called the 7 gods.
Oh, okay, 7 gods. Okay. Now, you and I talked in the past about there's like these craftsmen / Kalu / wise sages. Make sense of all that for us. Like, who are they, and what do they do in there?
The primeval sages in different traditions were kind of these semi-mythical, mythical beings who were given wisdom by the gods and who may have taught humanity skills. But it's a bit unclear. In the Erra epic, I might say these are the 7 sages. They're identified with fish, these fish figures.
Yep.
So they're identified with them. And they helped purify Marduk's image in the primordial past, and he sent them down. And then Erra provides replacements. But we don't really, I never got the impression that we really know what's going on. We know about Adapa. It's a really interesting story. Adapa was also has a biblical connection. I mean, the basic story goes that he was the servant of Enki, god of water and wisdom. And that one day he was kind of drowned by the west wind. I think it was the west wind, but before it drowned him, he broke its wings. And then he came up to heaven. And Erra, his master, told him, Anu, the sky god, is going to offer you bread. Refuse it. It is the bread of death. He's going to offer you water. It is the water of death. Refuse it. He's going to offer you oil. They're always fine. And then Adapa goes, and Anu, the sky god, greets him, and he offers him bread, and Adapa says no, and he offers him water, and Adapa says no, and he offers him oil, and oil, he anoints himself with oil. I never quite figured out what the oil means here. And then Anu laughs. And then he says, ha, you got tricked. This was the water of life, the bread of life. That is eternal life. So we have a very strange and interesting mirror of the story of the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden story, famously, God tells Adam and Eve that if they will eat of the tree of knowledge, they will die, as actually happens. But here, the God tells Adapa that he will die, but in fact, that was a lie. If he would have eaten that, if he had eaten that bread and drunk that water, he would have lived forever. And the question is why? Why does Ad do this? Is it a mistake? Probably not. But there's a theory that he did this so Adapa would return to humanity. Instead of being with the gods, he would return to humans. He would live a mortal life, but he would teach humans all of this knowledge, so it wouldn't be separated from them. So, and this is you have this kind of weird mirror of the biblical kind of text. In the Gilgamesh epic, there's Enkidu. He's kind of this wild man, and he roams when he's created. After he's created by the gods, he roams with the animals, and he's a bit stupid but happy, very strong. And then Gilgamesh sends a priestess, prostitute, one of those, definitely a woman, that's what we're sure about, the servant of Ishtar, to sleep with Enkidu, and then she does, and then he loses his strength and the harmony with the natural world that he had before. But he gains wisdom. He has a mind. And that is also similar to the story of the Garden of Eden, because in a way it's more explicit, because contact with the feminine, with the woman, through Eve, Adam lost his strength and his harmony with the world, but he gained the knowledge of good and evil. And Enkidu, through his contact with Shamhat, something similar happened to him, and he also died because of it, in the same way that Adam died because of the fall. But in a sense, it's more explicit because, especially in Christian thought, the original sin and the apple is equated with sex. And in the Mesopotamian story, it actually becomes explicit.
Really?
Yeah, in the Mesopotamian story of Enkidu and Shamhat, he sleeps with her. That's how, for 7 days and nights, actually. But that is how he gains wisdom and loses his strength, explicitly by sleeping with her. So you don't have the symbol of the apple that Christian commentators will say, oh, it stands in for sex or sin or something.
Yeah. So last question, and I'll let you go. So you actually mentioned there's 7 there, and then you also have that 7 in the Erra epic with the sages. So, one, do you think they're the same thing? And 2, this number 7 has different meanings.
Oh yeah, there are different groups of 7 gods. They just loved 7. We just really like the number 7. So you have the 7 sages, and you have the 7 destructive gods, and you have the 7 tablets of the Epic of Creation, and you have other 7s, but I don't remember now. But they're not the same, though.
Interesting. So you don't think it's like? I've typically heard it's like the number for completeness, at least in the Bible, or perfection. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's just a fun number. I don't have my own explanation of why they like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they don't fulfill same function exactly. Let me see for a second. Yes, so there are 7 sages. Maybe the 7 sages are the mirror image, in a sense, of the 7 gods, because the seven gods are destructive and the sages are
Uh-huh.
good. But I don't know. There's no explicit link between them. I mean, they're never in the same room at the same time,
Yeah.
as it were.
Y- I was gonna say what's really interesting about these texts, all these ancient texts, really is you have all these like, what a coincidence, the number 7 again, and it's like rarely, if ever, is it ever explained why the number 7's used.
Yeah, no, they don't. They don't do that. I mean, 3 is the big one. I mean, 3 is. I think all across the world, people have 3s.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Mesopotamia there are 3, and of course, there's the Trinity. In the Bible, there are many 3s, and it's just a fun number. Something to do with, I don't know, primes or something. Um, or something that somehow isn't even. Sometimes,
Yeah.
of course, numbers in Bible like 40, or Mesopotamia it's 60.
Yeah.
But 7, I don't have an answer for why it's 7.
Really interesting.
Your guess. Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Eli, this has been a lot of fun talking to you. Picking your mind is really fun, and it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Glad we finally got to do this.
All right.
Yeah. So, when you expect your dissertation to be done? In case
about
people
a
want to
year.
read it. 1 year, you
mean,
said?
in a while. I need.
Wow.
I'm set to submit it in a year, and then to publish it in like the best case scenario would be another 2 years.
Oh man.
Yeah, I know. It's academia. Everything works slowly.
Right.
It's not, it doesn't sell, so there's no incentive to actually put it out.
I
But
see.
I will. I promise when it will be out, I will be the first. I will let you know. All right.
Awesome. All right. This has been a lot of fun. I hope you have a great rest of your night there or day.
Thank you.
What time is it there, Eli?
8:40. I'm fine. I'm
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So where are you
Alright.
right now? Where are you right
Oh,
now?
New Haven. I'm in New Haven.
New Haven? Where's that?
Oh, Connecticut.
Connecticut. Oh. What are you doing in Connecticut? Is that where you go to school?
Yeah, Yale is in.
Oh, I did not know that. I thought you were overseas for some reason.
No. I was. Now I'm not.
Okay. Okay, cool. Well, that's cool. Awesome. All right, anyways, have a good night, Eli.